Hmm. I think we're live. Let's check the audio over here really quick. Right. I don't know why my streaming software is a little buggy today, but let's just keep on going. So now that it looks like we are live, we're going to go ahead and check out this deal in Huntsville. Today, this one came up on my feed just so you guys know where Huntsville is. Huntsville is right between Birmingham and Nashville. Lots of good stuff happening in Huntsville. I hear a lot about the growth in this area. So this property is on 6113 Colfax Road, Northwest Huntsville, Alabama, 35810. $165,000. I was looking for homes under 200, under 250, just because I only normally see rents around, I don't know, roughly around $2,000, sub $2,000. So you want to meet the 1% rule. It's probably what you need to kind of look for. Now, this home looks pretty good for the most part. Flooring looks great. Kitchen looks fine. I mean, you don't have to be super fancy, but this is a pretty clean home for the most part. Good condition. You might have to just check the washer and dryer connection in there. Keep the backyard de-iced while you're working on the home. Okay. Let's do a quick street view drive-by of this property. Looks pretty suburban, if anything. Doesn't look like a bad neighborhood by any means. Oh, yeah. It looks perfectly fine. All right. Next thing we want to do is we're going to go to tophap.com, tophap.com. I'm going to look for and check whether or not what the crime score might look like. Let's see. Tophap.com. Once you go over here, you can go ahead and click on the neighborhood section. Once you're in the neighborhood section, you're going to see that the crime score is 109, which is just right at the national average. That kind of makes sense because it's pretty suburban. So the neighborhood looks fine. Now, next thing we want to do is get the fair market rents. And this is in Madison County. So I'm going to go to Google HUD FMR, HUD space FMR. Go down and click access to small area FMRs. Look up FY 2024 FMRs. And we're going to pick Madison County. And this property was in the zip code 35810. So 35810, you're going to see that the fair market rents for a 3-bedroom is $1,500 and the fair market rents for a 4-bedroom is $1,800. So FMR $1,500, $1,800. I'm just going to note these numbers down. A fair market rent for 35810, and this is a 3-bed. And the reason I'm noting down all these numbers is because my partner really understands exactly how to underwrite. So this is just a lot easier. So now that I have the fair market rents for HUD, that's usually the ceiling rent. Now I want to go ahead and plug in the address for this property in affordablehousing.com, going to the owner's rent estimator section, owner's market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count, and I want to get the rents for a 3-bedroom. Let's see what that kind of comes out to. This is kind of right in line. I care most about the number on the far right side, which is says for 25 units within a 0.82 mile radius, the average market rent is $1,430. $1,430. So that's pretty close to $1,500. I'm going to assume that I can achieve a very similar rent as $1,500. So that's a 3-bedroom. Oops. 3-bedroom. Boom. Now I want to get a 4-bedroom rent. And I usually just get the 4-bedroom rent just so I can see whether or not there's a huge increase in the market rents by property. Whoops. Copy and paste the address again. Because I might think about the property and see whether or not there's a creative way to increase rents. Now you can kind of see that there really is no lift from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. I saw that the average market rents for 25 units here for a 4-bedroom home is $1,496 within a 1.27 mile radius. That tells me a $60 lift is not worth trying to convert this property into a 4-bedroom because you're not going to be able to get that $1,800 rent. Why? That's typically because there's a test. It's called the rent reasonableness test. And a rent reasonableness test essentially states that you cannot charge more rent to a housing choice voucher holder simply because they are a housing choice voucher holder, especially if the market does not support or does not have rental units of a similar that's comparable with similar amenities, etc. That justifies it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't call the housing authority and say, hey, what if I have more bathrooms, etc. Like that could help you get higher rents. But in this scenario, we don't see the lift here within the comparable properties within a short mile radius for the closest 25 units. So for me, I would be using $1,430, or maybe I could stretch it to $1,500 as my maximum rent for this property. Okay. Now we have to estimate a rehab here. And as we went through the photos, right, I'm going to go to my rehab calculator and I'm going to assume that I don't have any termite issues. I don't need to replace a water heater. Because if I do, since it's an on-market property, it'll be a little easier to negotiate a credit for that. I am going to replace one of the toilets with a high pressure flush toilet. I'm not going to be changing any of the bathrooms. I'm going to zero these out. Probably put a new microwave, new dishwasher. No dishwasher. I think they already had something like that. And I'm going to put in a new washer, a new dryer, including labor. Take out the repainting cabinets. I'm going to leave aside money to paint the place at $1,240. So it's $3 a square foot. I'm going to assume auto flooring is good. So I'm going to zero it out. I'm going to have $500 to keep the property landscaping in good shape and de-ice it. But I'm going to assume there's no issues with the roof. That leaves me with a total rehab number of $8,900. Okay. All right. For $8,900, that's going to flow through right here. I'm going to delete this $40,000 number since that was previously there because we were doing some converting on bedrooms. But I'm going to delete that. So that's where that number flows into. I'm going to plug in the purchase price here. The purchase price here is $165,000. And on this property, if I assume I'm doing a 25% down payment, and I'm also going to assume that my interest rate right now on a DSC loan is 8%. So my loan amount is going to be equal to the asking price. Subtract the down payment, and I'm going to get a loan for $123,750 at 8% interest. This is going to start 125.24, and that's pretty much it. I got 2.5% for closing costs, which is pretty reasonable. I'm going to have 10% for my maintenance. I got 10% for my property management. I got 3% for vacancy because I'm assuming this is a nicer area. You're not in like a crime-ridden area or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and zero this loan out because there was another loan in the secondary loan. So you don't want that in there to confuse anything. And I'm going to get my property tax number right from here. Oh, $26 for property taxes. That seems a little low. But we'll go with it. And then for monthly insurance, it's going to be $128. So I'm going to go equals 128 times 1.2. Usually these insurance estimates are based off of if someone would likely live there as the primary residence. But for me, I'm assuming that I am buying this property for a rental property, which results in, right? It results in a higher insurance premium. So that's I'm underwriting this deal. So this currently, assuming a 25% down and 8% interest rate, this will cash flow me $67 a month. So let's kind of write down these scenarios here. And I want to make sure you guys are able to follow how we come up with these scenarios. So at $1,500 in gross rent, my cash flow for this property is $67, and that's going to equal to a 1.5% cash on cash return. I was assuming $165,000 purchase price, a $8,900 rehab, 25% down, and 8.8% interest rate here. Okay. Now, because we know the rents can go up, we cannot adjust it. So I'm going to keep playing around with numbers and say, okay, well, what if I bought this property for way cheaper? What price do I need to buy this property for in order for me to meet my cash on cash return of, let's say, normally I go for 15%, but let's just go for 10%, right? If I lower my purchase price, look at me changing this asking price and focus on this number right here, the cash and cash hold, as I adjust the purchase price. If I lower this to $120,000, I'm now at 9%. If I lower this to $110,000, I'm now at 11.3%. All right. If I'm at 100 grand, I'm now at 14%. If I'm trying to get a 15% return on this property, well, boom, at $95,000, that will get me my target return on this property, right? So just remember, for every single property, there is a number or a set of terms that will allow it to meet and make it a deal. At $165,000 at a 3-bedroom, it might not be a deal, but at $95,000, it would definitely be a deal if you assume that rehab is different, is still $8,900. Now you might say, well, how much would you be willing to pay if your rehab was half of that? When you half your rehab, so let's pay attention to this, right? I this by 2, okay, and now my rehab is about roughly $4,500, okay. What am I willing to pay for this property now that my rehab is half and still achieve my 15% cash and cash return? Now all of a sudden I'm willing to pay 100 grand for this property. 102. Let's see. Yeah, I'm still able to achieve my return. So if I am still able to pay 102, which is $7,000 higher, right? Because my rehab was half at 4,500, assuming everything else stays constant. Now I'm still able to get a 15.2% cash and cash return. I'm 15.3, excuse me. And I'm still cash flowing $414, assuming my rent is still $1,500. All right. This hopefully you guys are able to see how when I adjusted my rehab number, I am now able to pay more for the property because my target return criteria is still 15%. All right. Now, the only other scenario that we might go for and evaluate is whether or not the property is owned free and clear. Maybe there's a chance for a creative finance deal. So let's go ahead and pull up PropStream really quick. When I pull up PropStream, what I'm looking for right now is whether or not there is an underlying loan that can take over subject to existing financing. Okay. Now, this was 6113. Whoops. 6113 Colfax Road, Huntsville. Okay. When you load up on PropStream and you find a property, you can click this details button. And if there is an underlying loan, you'll be able to see this in the mortgage and transaction history. Now, obviously, if you're working with a seller's agent, you can probably just ask that, but I'm just simply looking at this property from seeing what's possible. So I see that right here that there is a loan in place for $68,732 at 2.8%. Oh, that's a pretty good interest rate. 68,732. 68,732, and the interest rate was 2.8%. And the loan started on 12/14/2020, 12/14/2020. Okay. And that means that there is an equity portion of it. Now, if there's an equity portion of it, let's like 165. Let's go back to the original purchase price. I need the seller to finance the equity portion. So if I assume that my seller equity portion is $165,000 minus the down payment I'm already giving to the property, minus the existing loans balance, which we saw from right here, 64,022. 64,022. That's how much equity the owner still has, 59,728. Okay, well, if I'm able to take over this loan subject to the existing financing, what terms will allow me to still make this a deal? Now, this is probably the best scenario that you can probably get right here. So if you assume that you're taking over this existing loan sub 2, 68,000. So sub 2, yes, that's the scenario. But then the seller finance portion is going to be a little different. I am trying to make sure I achieve a 15% return. So in order to do that right now, my numbers say this is currently a 12.7% return, assuming I don't have to pay any interest to the seller for the equity portion. Well, what if I lower my down payment? Watch this. 20, 17.5, 18%. All right, so this still works. If I'm able to give the seller 18% down instead of 25%, right? And a seller finances to us at 0% interest rate, I'm able to buy the purchase price property at $165,000, assuming my rehab is $4,500 still. This will result in a 15.5% cash and cash return, and cash flows $495 a month, assuming my rent is still $1,500. All right. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone that's been following, because this is how you determine whether or not something's a deal, and how do you determine what terms and numbers makes it a deal. Notice it right here. All we did within the first 3 scenarios was that we assumed it was an on-market deal and we're getting conventional DSCR loans for this project, which means that we were getting 25% down at about 8% interest rate. If this was a creative finance deal and we were able to tell the seller, like, hey, I can give you the price you want as long as you give me the terms that I'm looking for to make the deal work. Well, assuming the rehab is still $4,500, my purchase price, yeah, I can give them 165, no changes there. But if the seller's willing to take 18% down, but then they're willing to finance the equity portion to me at $0 interest rate, that would still be a deal because I'm still able to achieve the 15% cash and cash return. All right, that's how it works. Now, let's go back to the original rehab of $9,000. So let's undivide the rehab number here by 2. So now I'm back to $8,900 rehab. It was back to $8,900 rehab. You see that my cash and cash return here went back from 15.5 to 13.9. In order to adjust upwards of my cash and cash return, I need to put less down on the property. So I have less cash invested. So if I go down to 15% return down payment, that still works. See how my cash and cash return just jump back up to 15.5%? Boom. That's how you make this work. So now I would be cash flowing $481. I'm still cash flowing 15.3. My purchase price here is $165,000 still. My rehab is now $8,900, right? Correct. And then I would adjust before it was $4,500, excuse me. And now my down payment is going to be 15% rich down payment. And my seller interest rate is still 0%. But that still makes it a deal. So this is how we determine what makes it a deal and what not. Now, will the seller go for this creative finance deal? Probably not yet because they've only been listed for 3 hours. But now you can pay attention to this property and see, hey, has it been sitting for 30, 60, 90 days? If there's been no movement on it, then you might offer, like, hey, I can give you an offer of $95,000, or I can give you an offer for $165,000 if you are able to give me terms for 15% down, 0% interest rate, and I'm able to take over the existing loan subject to the existing financing. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. That's our underwriting for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really had a good time analyzing deals today, and we'll be back here again tomorrow. Now, of course, this wasn't a solicitation for any investments. This is not investment advice. I'm simply showing you guys what I'm doing on a daily basis, analyzing deals, because this is the implied work of real estate investing. You have to analyze a lot of deals in order to get a deal. And the sooner you're able to realize what a deal looks like with the terms that you're looking for, this allows you to be a little less afraid, create that undeniable track history for yourself so that you can have the confidence to pull the trigger whenever you see a deal come your way. So have an amazing Thursday, everybody. Spend some quality time with your family and friends, and we'll be back here again tomorrow. Have an amazing day.